I always thought that if you put your heart and time into your family, you would get support and love. But sometimes life slaps you in the face so painfully and unexpectedly that you either collapse or pull yourself together and show what you can do. I got my slap late one night when I, tired after 2 shifts of work, finally stepped over the threshold of my small house in the suburbs of Seattle. And it all started with a simple paper note left on the kitchen table. I still remember the sound of my keys hitting the floor echoed in my head as I read the handwritten message. The lines were blurred in front of my eyes because of tears and extreme fatigue, but the meaning was clear. My unemployed husband said he was leaving me for my own sister. And not just leaving, but going to the sea with her with the money I was saving for our son Danny's education. I reread every word with a kind of dulled feeling, as if this wasn't my life, but someone's disgusting prank. I'm leaving. I love your sister. She's so much better than you, and she understands me so much better. And she doesn't blame me for not working. We're going to the ocean. We deserve a little happiness without you always nagging us. Don't try to look for us. And yes, I took the money out of my account. I consider it mine, too. Good luck. There you go. Not even a signature from him at the end. What shocked me most was not just the infidelity itself, but the fact that he had stolen all of our savings that I had been saving for years for our son's future. Danny dreamed of becoming a research biologist and had already applied to UCLA. We did not have the opportunity to pay for the entire curriculum at once, but I tried to at least save for the first year. It turned out that now there wasn't a dime left of that financial cushion. When the initial shock wore off, I collapsed onto the old couch in the living room. The room was lit only by the dim lamp above the bookcase. Usually I like to spend my evenings here, flipping through cooking magazines or sitting with a notebook where I jotted down ideas for new recipes. But at that moment, I didn't care about coziness or weekend plans. I was filled with resentment, anger, and a strange determination. I thought about Danny, who was already asleep in his room, tired after basketball practice. How was he even going to take the news about his dad? The thoughts swirled around in my head. And that the piggy bank for his future was empty? And then I shuddered, but not out of fear. I felt a sudden rush of adrenaline, as if some sort of tumbler switch had been turned on. No, I'm not giving him my life or the hope of our child. If he wants a war, he'll get it. It wasn't the first time my husband had shown his irresponsibility and selfishness, but I forgave each time, hoping he would come to his senses, that he was about to get a job and put his talents to good use. I was blind or pretended not to notice his constant infantilization, but now it's like I've had a breakthrough. I first met Brian, yes, that's my, now ex, husband's name, 15 years ago at a college party in Boston, where my best friend invited me. I was on a scholarship, working part-time at a local cafe, and Brian was always dabbling in dubious projects, claiming that one day he would become a famous photographer. He seemed cheerful and upbeat, and I liked his easygoing nature. It was only later that I realized that behind this was an elementary unwillingness to take responsibility. We were married quite quickly, and I took it as an incredible happiness. My younger sister Lily was enrolled in art college in New York at the time. We were close, we called often, we shared news, and I was happy that we had such a good family relationship. Brian was good with her, they joked together, and I heard her praise his sense of humor more than once. Then, when we had a son, we moved to Seattle. I was offered an interesting job in a small laboratory associated with a pharmaceutical company, and Brian assured me that here he would also have a chance in photography. But as time went on, it turned out that he couldn't find a project to his liking. As the years went by, he never really got to grips with any of the studios. We began to accumulate debts, house loan, the need to pay for Danny's kindergarten. In the end, I got 2 jobs at once. During the day, I worked as a lab technician, and in the evenings, sometimes part-time in the office typing, taking freelance orders to make ends meet. Danny's father, on the other hand, he was used to living off me. It pained me to admit it, but I still believed that he would come to his senses, start helping in some way, and close his black hole called creative endeavor. And now, after so many years of my hopes, this man also stole our son's money for the future. Yeah, it was a stab in the back. The morning after discovering the note, I woke up on the same couch. From the living room window, I could see the gray dawn, raindrops drumming on the glass, a typical morning picture for Seattle's suburbs. I felt exhausted, But I got up anyway and headed to the kitchen to make breakfast for Danny. My son was my priority. When he walked in, rubbing his sleepy eyes, he immediately noticed my puffy eyelids. "Mom, is something wrong?" I couldn't dare tell him everything, but I knew there was no point in hiding it. Trying to speak as calmly as possible, I told him that his father had gone to another city on important business and had taken the savings. I didn't lie, but I didn't tell the whole truth. Danny looked at me with big eyes and quietly asked if his father would be back soon. I just shook my head, hugged my son, and assured him that we'd be fine. That short conversation finally strengthened my resolve. I called the bank and it was confirmed. The account was zeroed out. At the same time, I found out an interesting detail. A couple of days before I received the note, suspicious transactions were made from my card, and then all the money was transferred to another account. I could have filed a fraud report, and while Brian was technically authorized to access our family account, he had nothing at all to do with my son's education fund, which was in a separate savings deposit. So this went beyond family quarrel. In fact, he had stolen not only the general funds, but also the money meant exclusively for Danny. I felt the anger and resentment turn to cold, calculating anger. Before work, I reread the note one more time. There was a frivolous mention that Lily understands, and that they deserve to be happy on the coast, away from my nagging and constant nagging. My eyes glazed over with the realization that my own sister was involved in all of this. In passing, I remembered how Lily had come to visit us for a week a couple months ago, ostensibly for a change of scenery. Brian had entertained her, taking her to cafes, showing her his creative world while I'd been away at work. Now I realized what kind of creative project they were actually discussing behind my back. At work, I still work in a lab. It's my main specialty. I tried to concentrate on the tests, but my head was full of plans for revenge and means to recover the stolen goods. My friend and co-worker, Lorraine, noticed something was wrong with me. I confided in her, briefly recounting the situation. Her eyes lit up with determination and she said firmly, "You need support, legal advice. Don't let this go. And don't be afraid to stand your ground. He was out of line a long time ago." Of course, I knew I'd need a lawyer and a solicitor. I might even have to go to the police. But in the meantime, I wanted to check one more thing. Where exactly were they going? Sea is a broad term, considering we're on the West Coast and the ocean is a couple hours away if we're talking local resorts. But there's sunny California, there's Mexico, there's Florida, if they bought tickets to the other coast at all. I was sure they would leave a mark on social media either way. My sister was very fond of posting photos on Instagram. Even if it was from a hidden account, it could be figured out. A couple friends in the information department were willing to help on the sly if needed. The next morning, I contacted a legal aid clinic at a local community organization in Seattle. Told them the situation, mentioned the money in my son's account. The lawyer confirmed that it was a serious matter because the funds were earmarked and I had all the documents that the deposit was in Danny's name and my guardian's name. Brian had broken the law, and if I decided to file a report, he could face real criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. We discussed a strategy. First, try to return the money voluntarily by writing a formal letter of notification, and if there was no response, go to the police and prosecute. Part of me was hesitant. Am I really ready to see my husband, albeit my ex-husband, put behind bars? But the other part was already adamant. He betrayed me, stole from my child, and what is this even though the former, the man ceased to be a husband at the moment when he wrote that disgusting note? I realized that now I had no choice. I had to get tough. If he's capable of taking away my son's future, I have no moral obligation to him. Of course, there was a cocktail of feelings inside me, including hurt, resentment, humiliation. But the rage and maternal desire to protect Danny outweighed. I went to the mirror in my bedroom and looked at myself for the first time in years. Dark circles under my eyes, a tired look, but determination in every gesture. I spoke softly. "I won't let you ruin my life. I will fight." On my lunch break at work, I went outside with my coffee and checked social media. As expected, Lily managed to post a few stories on Instagram. In one, she is pictured against the backdrop of a golden beach with a tall palm tree. The geotag hinted at the resort town of Santa Monica in California. The outline of an ocean shore could be seen in the background, and a man's hand flashed in the stories. My insides clenched. It was clearly Brian. It looked like they'd settled there quite nicely in a couple days, probably renting an expensive hotel. My money was flowing. My heart was pounding in my chest as I scrolled on. Lily wrote enthusiastic captions like, "Loved one fulfills dreams," and "Our perfect weekend." If it weren't for the familiar laughing voiceover, I would have thought she'd just found some resort suitor. But no, it was definitely my husband, ex, and they clearly weren't skimping on dinners or entertainment. My anger was boiling over and my head was feverishly constructing a plan. I would take screenshots, save them in case I needed proof of the wasteful use of the stolen funds. I'll gather my courage and write a formal letter through my lawyer, demanding that the money be returned to my son's account within 48 hours. If they don't respond, I'll go straight to the police. At the same time, I decided to call my parents and tell them the whole story, because they should know what Lily was up to. But the call went nervously. My mom repeated confusedly that Lily is a grown woman. She decides everything on her own, and my dad was silent. I realized they were shocked, but apparently they hadn't controlled their youngest daughter's actions in a long time. I didn't know who to blame more, my sister, who never seemed to truly respect my boundaries, or my parents who spoiled her. But this conversation only convinced me that family support was pointless. The third day after Brian's disappearance, I got home from work early. I had to send an official letter to him and Lily. The lawyer helped me draft a letter telling them that the money belonged to my son and had been taken illegally. I demanded the full amount and threatened that otherwise I would go to the police. After emailing the document and duplicating copies to their personal messengers, I felt a sharp rush of energy. There was no more fear or trembling in my hands. Everything was clear and logical. In good conscience, I'd left them a chance to get out of the situation with minimal repercussions. But inside, I hoped they would take it seriously. To be on the safe side, I included in the subject line a link to the Washington state law articles governing such cases. By midnight, I received a reply. Or rather, several. From Lily, a torrent of insults that I was a hysterical, jealous, boring sister, and she'd been unhappy in our family for a long time, and now she was finally getting out. From Brian, much shorter. "Heard your threats. I know we both own that deposit, so I have a right. Don't you dare ruin our vacation." I glanced at the screen with a gloating grin. Great. Then, we're going all the way. In the morning, I called my lawyer and told him we were filing a police report for theft and fraud, attaching copies of bank statements and all the evidence we needed, including screenshots. If they don't want to negotiate amicably, let them answer according to the law. In the evening, after filing the statements, I mentally prepared myself for another battle, explaining to my son that his father had actually committed a crime. I was afraid that Danny would be traumatized, but there was no point in hiding the truth. To my surprise, he took the situation more calmly than I thought he would. I guess he had already felt a chill in his relationship with his father and guessed that he didn't really care about his family. But he was still depressed. I promised him that we would find a way out together, and I would do everything I could to get him into the right program and make his dream come true. While I waited for the police and the bank to respond, a wave of rumors swept through our circle of acquaintances. It turned out Brian and Lily were posting pictures from all over California. Maybe they decided to travel up and down the coast. That's when we found out they were burning through the stolen money. Some of our mutual acquaintances from Seattle wrote to me on social networks. Some sympathized, others asked if it was really that serious. I wasn't going to hide the truth. Yes, he had stolen my son's money, gone to my sister, and now I had to deal with it legally. A week later, a police detective came to my work. He clarified the details, showed me the transaction printouts, and let me sign a statement of case. I found out that inquiries had already been sent to California banks. The account where the money had been transferred was probably registered to Lily or both of them, and if so, they could both be involved in the case. The situation seemed unbelievable. My own sister and my husband were fugitives who were about to receive a subpoena. Does that happen often in ordinary families? But I was prepared. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a victim or a troubled woman, as Brian liked to call me in front of my friends. I was a warrior, standing up for my son and my dignity. A couple of weeks after submitting the application, I received a letter from the bank saying that the withdrawal had been deemed fraudulent because the deposit was in Danny's name and Brian was not the son's legal representative. The son is not an infant. But he is a minor, and because of the special terms of the deposit, any transactions had to be approved by me or Danny himself. This meant that Brian and Lily would be required to return the funds. Otherwise, they were facing legal action. The police, too, confirmed that they had been sent a formal notice of investigation. And, as if on cue, troubling notes began to appear on Lily's Instagram. First, their joyful photos from expensive resorts disappeared. Then she started posting strange stories about trouble with the law, unkind people who want to deprive her of happiness. I've had acquaintances recount to me that they supposedly had trouble with their bank cards. Apparently the blockades had started to take effect. I couldn't deny the satisfaction of seeing their fun trip go down in flames, but the question remained, would they return the money to my son's account? And if so, what next? I was already determined to get a divorce, and with the strictest possible terms, no property or alimony for my husband, only child support. One night, as I was putting Danny to bed, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I don't usually answer these, but something inside me told me I should pick up the phone. It turned out to be Lily. Her voice was clearly nervous. "Listen, we have a problem. Why did you apply? We're family, we could have worked things out," she began. "Are you kidding me?" I couldn't help but laugh sarcastically. "Work it out? You ran off with my husband, stole money from my son. What kind of settling do you expect?" "But we didn't mean to steal." Her voice trailed off into a squeal. "It's just that Brian was saying that the money belonged to him too, and you had enough. Why did you start the scandal?" I could barely keep from yelling into the phone, but I just said, "If you want to get away with this, give me the money back, now, and get ready for trial." "I'm not discussing anything else with you. Wait. You know I love you and Danny, and I didn't mean any harm." There was panic in her voice. "You've already done the wrong thing, Lily." I sighed heavily. "And you and Brian are going to have to pay for it." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with a mixture of outrage and painful longing. "That's my sister. I mean, we were inseparable as kids. Why did she become like this?" Blind, selfish desire to snatch more? Envy? Or just a crush on the free artist image that Brian represented? Whatever the case, bridges were burned. Another 2 weeks passed. I'd already filed the official divorce papers, and the police confirmed that Brian and Lily had returned most of the money to their son's account. They did it almost at the last minute, though, when they were already facing criminal charges. Rumor has it they ran out of savings and had their accounts blocked. They were forced to return to Washington, but not to me, of course. They stayed in some run-down motel while their lawyers prepared for trial. In the end, thanks to my evidence, the bank's testimony, and the intervention of a competent lawyer, the case was resolved in my favor. Brian received a formal warning with probation and an obligation to pay all court costs. Lily also faced a number of financial problems. She spent a lot of her own money, or was it mine? Trying to buy them a lawyer. How their relationship went on from there I didn't ask much about. I wouldn't be surprised if they split up after the first few problems. With my divorce finalized, I focused on my future plans with Danny. A couple of close friends helped me raise money for charity, and I was able to collect some compensation from Brian and Lily. My son wasn't left without the opportunity to apply to his dream university. I had to work 2 jobs for a while longer, but I was looking around for a more stable position. I found a vacancy as a research assistant in a large company where the pay was higher, and even managed to get an interview. I was ready to be hired. Things started to get better. One Saturday evening, sitting on the terrace of our house with a cup of green tea, I caught myself thinking that I no longer feel that sharp pain and resentment. Yes, it left a scar in my soul, but now I knew that I would not let anyone treat me or my son like that. I became stronger, learned to set clear boundaries and stand up for them, even against my family. 6 months after all these events, I received a message from my mom. "Lily is trying to get in touch, wants to reconcile. Maybe you can forgive her?" But I no longer felt hatred for my sister, more like indifference. Too many bridges had been burned. The important thing for me was that Danny was finally going to university, and I had closed a painful chapter of life. I replied, "I wish her well, but I'm not ready to socialize yet." In the evening, Danny and I drove to the sea, to the very place where everything had begun to fall apart, but without fear or pain. We stood on the sandy shore, looking out at the waves of the Pacific Ocean, and I felt free. Yes, we had been betrayed, but we had regained what was ours, and we were only stronger. I knew now that no amount of betrayal could stop a man who was willing to fight for his happiness, and it certainly wouldn't stop a mother from protecting her son's future.